The cold ground didn't care for her tears. Jalara dropped to her knees, her trembling hands pressing into the wet earth. 2 small mounds of dirt rested before her. No names, no markers. Just 2 tiny graves, made with her own shaking hands. She whispered their names again and again. Nilo. Saya. Her voice was barely a breath. Her lips cracked from crying too long. Her eyes were swollen, dry, empty, but she couldn't stop. Her twins. Her babies gone. The fire had taken them, stolen them from her arms while smoke filled the sky. She had tried to go back. She had fought the flames with bare hands, screaming for them. But her people pulled her away. They're gone, they told her. The human did this. Then they left. The elders exiled her from the tribe, saying her bad luck had brought death. Now she was alone in the forest. No food, no shelter, just 2 graves and a heart full of pain. The sun had started to fall behind the trees. The light turned orange, then red. The wind blew softly across the leaves, but to Yalara, it sounded like a lullaby she used to sing to the twins. That made her cry harder. She placed her head on the ground between the graves and stayed there, unmoving. She didn't hear the footsteps. She didn't notice the human watching her from the trees. Jack stood behind the brush, hidden in shadows. He wore dark survival clothes, a hood over his head, and a rough satchel at his side. He had been following her for 2 days, now keeping his distance, watching, making sure she stayed safe, and waiting for the right time. He looked at the 2 small graves and lowered his head. They weren't dead, not anymore. Jack had saved them. When the village was burning, he had been nearby, trying to repair his crashed ship. He saw the flames, heard the screams. He didn't wait. He ran into the fire, broke through the wall of one of the huts, and found them 2 alien children, crying and coughing, trapped under debris. He carried them out before the roof fell. The mother never saw him. She was being dragged away. By her people, they thought the human was the reason for the fire. They were wrong. Now, he had her children, safe in a hidden shelter deep in the woods. They were alive, eating, sleeping, drawing on the walls, laughing. They asked about their mother every day, but Jack couldn't bring them back, not yet. Jalara believed he was a monster. All her kind feared humans. And if he walked up to her now, after all she had lost, she might run or worse. So he waited, watched, protected, and tonight. As she cried on the ground, Jack took 1 step closer. Jalara finally noticed a sound, barely. A crunch of leaves. Her head snapped up. Her sharp alien eyes scanned the trees. Her breath caught. She stood quickly, wiping her tears and drawing the small stone knife from her belt. "Who's there?" she called out. Silence. Jack didn't move. He held his breath. She stepped forward, her eyes narrowing. Her ears twitched. She had good senses. But the human was trained. Silent. Still. After a long moment, she gave up and turned back to the graves. She dropped to her knees again and hugged the dirt. Jack felt a sharp pain in his chest. Guilt. He wanted to tell her. To walk out and show her the truth. But he knew grief was like fire. It burned everything too fast. If he rushed it, she might never trust him. So he backed away slowly, fading deeper into the woods. But before he left, he placed something at the base of a nearby tree, a small food pouch. Fresh fruit, protein bars, water. She wouldn't know who left it, but she'd find it before night. Then he disappeared. Moments later, Jalara turned, wiping her face. Sand spotted the pouch. She stared at it. Her body froze. Her hands shook. Slowly, she crawled toward it. She opened it. Her eyes widened. Food, clean water. She looked around, confused. No one was there. Her breath quickened. Her heart raced. She held the pouch close, unsure if it was a trick. But her hunger was stronger than fear. She took a bite, and far away, hidden high in a tree, Jack watched with quiet relief. He had made contact, not with words, but with kindness. The first step had been taken. He would not stop until her tears turned into a smile and her children were back in her arms. Not yet, but soon. The smoke rose from her small fire, curling into the sky like ghosts of her past. Jalara sat beside the flames, wrapped in leaves and worn cloth, her eyes hollow but alert. She had eaten half the food from the mystery pouch. Her body felt a little stronger, but her mind was restless. Someone had left it for her, someone who knew where she was, someone watching, but who? And why? The stars blinked above her as night swallowed the forest. Strange sounds echoed in the distance, bird-like. Screeches, deep growls, branches snapping in the dark.
Oh.
This world was not her home. She had no tribe, no allies, no map. Only 2 small graves behind her and a growing fear inside her chest. She threw more sticks into the fire, hoping the light would scare away predators. But something moved beyond the trees. She felt it. Her ears twitched. She turned her head. Sound of a footstep, quiet, careful. She stood up slowly and picked up her stone knife. "Come out," she said, her voice low but steady. "I hear you." "Hey, nothing." Then, from the shadows, a shape stepped forward. He was tall, broad. A cloak covered most of his body. But his face was exposed smooth skin, a sharp jaw, a human. Her breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened. Grip on the knife tightened. Human, the same kind blamed for her children's death? She took a step back. "Stay away," she hissed. The man raised both hands in peace. "I'm not here to hurt you." His voice was deep but calm. His accent was strange, but she understood him. "How do you know my tongue?" she asked. "I've been listening," he said gently. "I know your name, Jalara?" She froze. No one had spoken her name since the fire. No one had dared. "Who are you?" she whispered. "Jack," he said, "just a traveler. But I saw what happened to your village." Her eyes burned. "Then you saw my children die." Expression tightened. "I saw the fire, saw the people abandon you. But I didn't cause it." Jalara stepped closer to the flames, keeping them between her and the stranger. "Then what do you want? To help?" She laughed bitterly. "Help? Why now? You hide in trees, leave food like I'm a starving animal, then appear from the dark? Are you hunting me?" Jack didn't answer right away. He reached into his cloak, slowly, carefully, and pulled out a small folded cloth. He tossed it onto the ground beside the fire, then stepped back. Jalara looked down. It was a child's drawing scribbles made with coal on white paper. It showed 2 alien children holding hands with someone. Much taller, a human figure drawn with a smiling face. Her heart stopped. Her eyes locked on the little symbols. Above the head's childish writing, "Nello, Saya, Jack." "No," she whispered. Her knees buckled, and she dropped to the ground. She picked up the drawing with shaking hands. "How? How do you have this?" Jack took a slow breath. "Because they're not gone." She looked up, eyes wild. "What are you saying?" "Pulled them from the fire," he said, voice heavy with truth. "Kept them alive." Jalara stared at him, her face pale. For a moment, the forest went silent. Even the wind seemed to stop. "You're lying," she said weakly. "I can show you," Jack said. "But not now, not in the dark. You need rest and food." She stared, down at the drawing again. The shaky little handwriting, the smiley faces. She knew her children's hands. This was real, but her heart refused to hope. "Why?" she asked, voice cracked. "Why would you save them?" Jack stepped forward just a little. "Because I couldn't watch them die. And I couldn't leave a mother to cry over empty graves." Her lip trembled. "You're human," she said. "Yes. They told me humans are monsters." Jack looked into her eyes. Then maybe they lied. The fire snapped between them. She didn't speak again. Not that night. She sat by the fire, gripping the drawing to her chest, staring at the flames. Jack sat on the other side, silent, still. 2 strangers, one with a broken heart. One with a heavy secret, separated by fire and fear, but no longer. Truly alone? The wind blew the smoke up into the sky. The forest watched, the graves behind. Her stayed quiet, but deep in the woods, in a hidden place, two small voices were whispering in their sleep, "Mama." The flames hadn't just burned the village, they burned her soul. Jalara sat awake while the fire before her faded into glowing embers. Her eyes stared into them, but her mind saw something else, something far more painful: smoke, screams, and the final cries of her twins. She didn't speak to the human, not since he told her they were alive. She didn't ask for proof, didn't run, didn't scream. She just sat there, trapped inside a memory that refused to let go. Jack sat across from her, silent, letting her remember. He knew the truth had struck deep, but grief doesn't break. All at once, it cracked slowly like ice under pressure. And tonight, the ice was breaking. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. Jalara had just returned from gathering fruit, her twins running behind her giggling. Nilo kept stopping to poke at beetles. Saya kept trying to balance rocks. They were small, bright-eyed, curious about everything. Her world revolved around them. She remembered laughing, telling them to hurry back home. The scent of cooked roots and warm tea had filled the air. Her tribe was celebrating the return of hunters from the eastern ridge. Then the sky turned orange. The scream of sirens foreign. Mechanical ripped through the forest. Before anyone could react, fire rained from the sky. Explosions tore through. The village huts, screams filled the air. The ground shook. Fire swallowed the wooden clay homes. It's like a starving beast. She grabbed her twins and ran, but the fire was faster. One of the huts collapsed in front of them. Debris blocked the path. Smoke clouded her vision. She could hear Nilo coughing. Saya clung to her leg, sobbing. She turned, looking for another way out. Then the ceiling above them cracked. A massive wooden beam fell. She threw herself over the twins. Pain, heat, darkness. When she woke, she was being dragged. Her tribe pulled her from the rubble, screaming that it was too late. She fought them, bit them, kicked, begged to go back, but they held her down. Later that night, after the fires cooled, they showed her what they found: charred remains near. "Where her twins had been, they're gone," said the elder. And the humans brought the fire. She had screamed until her voice died. Now, sitting by the dying campfire, she whispered, "I saw their ashes." What? Jack didn't move. She looked up slowly. Her eyes were filled with both pain and rage. "They showed me their burned bodies." Jack shook his head softly. "They didn't show you bodies, showed you ash." She blinked. He leaned forward. "They didn't check. They assumed. I was there. I heard you scream. I ran into the hut, found them under a broken bed, coughing but alive. I carried them out." She stared at him, frozen. "I didn't know who they belonged to," he continued. "I just knew they needed help, so I took them, hid them, fed them, protected them." Jalara's throat tightened. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "'Cause you would have tried to kill me," he said plainly. "Your people hate mine. I'm not sure I blame you." Silence. Then she asked the question she had feared most. "Are they really live?" Jack reached into his cloak and pulled out a small object of clay. Necklace with 2 tiny blue stones. Her breath caught. She had made that necklace for them. Her hands trembled as she took it from him. The warmth of it felt unreal. "The twins never took it, often unless someone made them. They're waiting for you," Jack said gently. "They ask about you every night." She held the necklace tight to her chest and shut her eyes. Then her body began to shake. Not from fear, not from cold, but from the sudden, crushing wave of hope. Real hope. The kind that had died with the fire and now burned again deep inside. She didn't speak for a long time. Finally, she opened her eyes and looked at Jack. "Take me to them." He didn't answer. He just nodded, and in the distance, behind the trees, behind silence and sorrow, 2 small hearts waited for their mother to return. The forest floor was damp from the morning mist, but something caught her: a tiny, fresh footprints pressed into the mud. Jalara stopped mid-step, her breath hitching. She stared at them, kneeling slowly to touch the prints with her fingers. They were small, light, spaced like children running or walking. 2 sets. Her heart skipped. Her hand hovered over the tracks, trembling. She looked back at Jack, who was just a few steps behind her, his expression unreadable. These are theirs, she said softly, aren't they? Didn't speak, she turned back to the footprints. They continued forward deeper into the woods, weaving between tree roots and tall grass. Her legs moved before her thoughts could catch up. She began to follow them, walking faster and faster. Wait, Jack called, but she didn't. She was running now, pushing through branches, jumping over roots. Her eyes were wide, locked on the path ahead. The prints were getting fresher, closer. She could almost hear their laughter, feel their little arms wrap around her. Then suddenly dash nothing. The footprints stopped. The ground ahead was smooth rock, no longer soft enough to hold. Their marks. A thick fog drifted through the trees. Everything fell quiet, too quiet. Yalara froze. Jack caught up behind her, breathing hard. I told you to wait. She ignored him. Where did they go? They were right here. She looked around, desperate, scanning the trees, the moss, the rocks. No sounds, no voices. No movement, just fog, and then something snapped behind them. Jalara spun around, her knife already in hand, but Jack stepped in front of her calmly. Don't move. His hand went to his waist, pulling out a strange device, blinked softly, emitting a low pulse. A red light blinked behind a tree. Yalara's eyes narrowed. What is that? SensorNet, Jack said. Cloaked perimeter. If anyone passes through, it alerts me. You mean you're trapping something? No, he said. I'm protecting something. She stepped back. From what? Jack didn't answer. Instead, he walked toward the blinking light and pressed his hand to the bark of the tree. The ground rumbled lightly, then a section of earth shifted. A metal hatch, hidden under moss and stone, rose from the ground. Yalara's breath caught. What is this? Shelter? Jack replied. Deep, hidden, warm, safe. She stared at the door as it slowly opened, revealing a narrow stairwell leading down into darkness. I don't trust this, she said quietly. You shouldn't, Jack replied honestly. Not until you see what's inside. Her grip on the knife tightened. Her heart pounded, but her feet moved forward. She followed him into the shelter. Inside, it was quiet to quiet. The stairwell led into a long tunnel lit with soft yellow lights. The walls were lined with drawings, hundreds of them, crayons, charcoal, bits of dried paint, stick figures holding hands. Alien sons, strange creatures, after captured on walls. Yalara stopped and stared at one drawing in particular. It showed her. She was drawn in brown lines with big bright eyes. Standing beside her were 2 small alien children, one holding her hand, the other on her back. The word Mama was written underneath, shaky and uneven. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Every day, Jack said from behind her. They draw you every day. She placed her hand over the drawing, tracing the outline of her own face. Her fingers shook. Her throat was tight. A small sound echoed from the end of the tunnel. Laughter. Yalara froze. She turned sharply toward the sound. 2 small shadows peeked around the corner, then ducked back. Jack smiled gently. They're shy. They think you're a dream. Yalara took a step forward. Her voice was barely a whisper. Nilo Saya, silence, then tiny footsteps, and suddenly 2 small alien children ran into view, eyes wide, voices high with surprise. Mama. Yalara dropped to her knees, arms open. Tears already streaming, they slammed into her chest. She wrapped them in the tightest hug she had ever given, pressing her face into their hair, breathing them in, shaking as she wept. They cried too. Held her like they never wanted to let go, and Jack stood quietly behind them, watching, protecting, remembering the fire. The screams, the risk he took, and feeling, for the first time since then, that maybe it was all worth it. Yalara didn't let go. Her arms stayed locked around her children like vines protecting precious flowers. Nilo clung to her waist, Sia buried her face in Yalara's chest, tiny hands gripping tightly. Their warmth, their scent, their weight tit was real. Not a dream. Not a memory. They were alive. The walls around them felt too small for a moment that big. Jack stepped back, giving them space. He had waited so long for this reunion, but now that it had happened, he felt like a ghost, standing in someone else's home. Jalara finally looked up, her face wet with tears, but her eyes sharper now. "How did you keep them alive?" she asked. Jack nodded toward the hallway. "I'll show you." Still holding one child in each hand, Jalara followed him. They walked through the rest of the underground shelter. The tunnel opened into a larger chamber carved into the earth. Soft lights glowed from the ceiling, and strange human machines hummed quietly in the background. There was a small kitchen with basic food supplies, a sleeping area with 3 beds, a table covered in crayon drawings, a pile of tiny clothes, hand-stitched with mismatched threads. Jalara blinked. "You built all this?" Jack gave a tired smile. "Didn't have a choice. After I pulled them from the fire, I couldn't go back to the station. Your people would have killed me. I couldn't take them into human zones either." She looked around. Slowly, everything smelled like effort and survival. "You raised them here underground?" she asked, almost in disbelief. "Yeah," Jack said, rubbing the back of his neck. "They grew fast. Smart kids. But they cried for you every night." Saya tugged at Yalara's robe. "We made you pictures." Nilo pointed at the wall. "That's our favorite one." Yalara turned. One large drawing took up the center of the wall. It showed her holding both children under a tree. Behind them was a tall figure in black dashjack. There was a sun, a house, and flowers. Below it, written in 2 different handwritings, were the words, "Mama will find us. Jack will keep us safe." Jalara dropped to her knees again. Her fingers touched the drawing. "I thought I buried you," she whispered. Nilo leaned his head against her shoulder. "We thought you were still crying." Yalara held both of them close again. "I was." Later, Jack gave her warm tea and sat nearby, quietly letting her ask questions. "Why did you risk your life?" she asked. He didn't answer right away because they were calling for help, he finally said. "And nobody else listened. But you're human. I know." She looked at him closely now, the scar on his cheek, the old burn on his arm, Jack's tired eyes. "You could have left them. You should have." "I couldn't." A long silence passed. Then Yalara asked, "Do they know what happened to the village?" Jack nodded. "I told them parts, not all. I didn't want to fill their heads with fear." Alada lowered her gaze. "I blamed your kind." "Most do," he replied softly. She stared at the fire pit inside the shelter. The warmth it gave wasn't just from Flamette, came from something else. Something unfamiliar. "I don't understand you," she said. Jack gave a short smile. "Most don't." As the night grew deeper, the twins fell asleep beside her. Their breathing slow, peaceful. Their faces looked softer now, like they'd finally found something they lost. Long ago? Yalara covered them with a blanket and looked back at Jack. He was already standing. "I'll keep watch at the tunnel door," he said. "You don't have to." "I do," he said. "I always do." She didn't stop him, but just before he left the room, her voice followed him. "You gave them a home." He paused. "You saved them," she said. "And you didn't ask for anything." Jack turned slightly, meeting her eyes. "They're not mine," he said, "but they're still worth saving." He walked into the shadows of the hallway, and Yalara sat there in silence, no longer grieving over empty graves, but holding a truth more powerful than pain. Her children were alive, and a human had brought them back. Jalara woke with the weight of 2 warm bodies curled against her. Sia had one arm across her chest, mouth slightly open in sleep. Nilo was wrapped around her other side, clutching her robe like a lifeline. For a moment she didn't move. She just listened to their soft breathing, the hum of the shelter walls. The safety of this underground place. She had dreamed of this moment so many times, only to wake alone. But this was real. She kissed their foreheads gently. Her hands trembled. Not from fear, but from the fragile joy of holding what she thought was lost forever. She stood slowly, covering them with the soft blanket Jack had made from old scraps. Her feet carried her through the dim hallway toward the outer chamber. Jack was already awake. He was sitting at the control panel near the tunnel entrance, scanning an old screen showing flickers of forest activity outside. A hot drink steamed. Beside him, his back was straight, eyes sharp. This wasn't a man who ever truly rested. Jalara watched him quietly for a moment. "You don't sleep much, do you?" she finally said. Jack didn't turn. Not really. Never trusted sleep since. "The war." She stepped closer. "You were a soldier?" "I was whatever they needed," he said. "Now I'm just the guy who keeps the kids fed." He gave a tired smile, but she saw the pain behind it. "Why didn't you tell me right away?" she asked. He finally looked at her. "You weren't ready? I could have taken them sooner, saved you the burden." "No," he said firmly. "They weren't a burden. Not for a second." His voice cracked just enough to make her look away. "I wasn't just feeding them," he continued. "They were feeding me too. Gave me something to protect, something to live for." She took a seat beside him, silent. For a long time neither spoke. Then Jack asked, "What will you do now?" The question hit harder than she expected. "I don't know," she said. "My people think I'm cursed. If I return, they'll reject me again. Or worse, take the children from me." Jack nodded slowly. "Then don't go back." Her head turned sharply. "What do you mean?" "I mean stay." He said, "Here. With them." "With me?" Jalara looked into his eyes. "Why would you offer that?" "You don't owe me anything," he said. "But your kids need more than a roof. They need you. And if staying here keeps you all safe, I'll make room." Tears touched her eyes again, but not from sadness. This was something she had never known before. Not among her own people. Not even from the father of her children. This was selfless, real, human, double quotes. "Do they love you?" She asked quietly. Jack took a long breath. "I don't know if I deserve it, but they say they do." "You do," she said. "They told me in their sleep." He blinked, surprised. She smiled softly. "Nilo dreamed of you fighting a monster for him. Saya said she had a daddy made of metal who kept her warm." "Akta!" Jack laughed under his breath. "I've been called worse." Jalara touched his arm. "Thank you," she said, "for giving them your strength, when I had none left." Jack looked down at her hand but didn't pull away. "You gave it back," he said. "The moment they saw you again." That day the twins woke up giggling, running through the shelter like nothing had ever happened. Nilo challenged Jack to a sneaking contest. Saya made Yalara sit for an hour while she braided her mother's long hair with ribbons made from scavenged cloth. Laughter filled the rooms. Walls that once echoed with silence, now alive with voices, joy, and footsteps. And in that moment, the pain of the past began to lose its grip. Jalara watched Jack teaching Nilo how to use an old light tool. She watched the way he crouched low to their level, how patient he was, how he let them climb on his back without complaint. He wasn't just a guardian. He had become something more, something rare. That night, as the children slept again, Yalara stood at the entrance tunnel, looking out into the star-filled sky, beyond the shelter's camouflaged hatch. Jack stood beside her. "They're yours," she whispered. "But I think you're theirs too." He didn't respond right away. And he said, "They saved me, Jalara. Maybe you did too." She looked at him. And for the first time since the fire, since the loss, since the tears, she didn't feel alone. The stars above the trees blinked like quiet witnesses. Jalara stood at the top of the forest ridge, holding Sia in one arm, Nilo beside her, gripping her hand tightly. Jack stood a few steps behind, rifle across his back, eyes scanning the horizon. They were looking down at the valley, the place where her old village once stood. There was nothing left now. Only burned ruins buried beneath, green moss and ashdot. She had come here to say goodbye, not to the place, but to the life she had once believed was hers. "Is that where we were born?" Nilo asked softly. Yalara nodded. "Yes. Is that where?" "The fire happened," Sia whispered. She didn't answer right away. Her hand tightened around her daughter. Yes, little one. But the fire didn't win. You did. Sia leaned her head on her mother's shoulder. Neela looked up at Jack, curious. Will we live here now? Jack shook his head. Not there. Somewhere safer. Alara turned around to face him. She had made her decision. Let's not go back again, she said. Jack raised an eyebrow. To the shelter? No, she said. Let's not go back to who we were before all this. He studied her face, trying to understand. I've lived my whole life following others, she continued. Rules, traditions, leaders who said mothers like me were weak, who said children without fathers were broken. She looked down at her twins. They were wrong. Jack said nothing. He just listened. You gave them more love than anyone in my tribe ever could. You gave me more trust than I gave myself. She stepped closer to him, and I don't want to lose that. I don't want my children to lose you. His eyes widened slightly. What are you saying? Jalara took a breath. I'm saying this family needs you, Jack, not just as a protector, as part of it. Silence passed between them. Then Nilo spoke up innocently. Does that mean Jack's our new dad? Jack blinked. Saya giggled. He braid hair too? Talara laughed, the sound bright and full for the first time in forever. Jack scratched the back of his neck. I can try. They made their new home near the cliffs, hidden by trees, built together with stones and scrap. Wood and warmth. Jack taught the twins how to fish. Jalara taught them how to track animals without harming them. The children taught both of them how to laugh again. Days passed like gentle winds. No tribe. No rules. No fear. Just family. One night, Jack sat outside. Their new home, staring up at the stars. Jalara joined him. Wrapping herself in a blanket, her hair loose in the wind. You still think you don't deserve any of this? She asked. Jack smiled faintly. Every day. You do, she whispered. You still think humans are monsters? She leaned her head on his shoulder. No, just misunderstood. He chuckled softly. That's fair. She looked at him with tired but loving eyes. You didn't just save my children, Jack. You saved me. You gave me something too, he said. What? A place where I don't have to run anymore? They sat in silence, wrapped in stars and quiet peace, while two children slept safely inside, never knowing how close they had come to being lost forever. Jalara had mourned two graves in the forest, but now she held a future far brighter than she'd ever imagined. And it began with one man who didn't ask for thanks, who didn't want power, only a chance to do what was right.